Hello again. I am Tammy Marshall, and today I'm going to share with you the first chapter of my thriller. This is my most recent book. If you didn't yet get a chance to watch the opening video about this, please do. That also contains the prologue for it. So I will share with you the first chapter of this, in which we see how Nora, our protagonist, comes to figure out that her twinges are real. So this is just a little bit long, but I hope that you will stick with me. So chapter 1. This takes place in 2004. Nora had been teaching for 8 years before she realized that the sensations she received from certain students were something more than funny feelings. By then, she'd long left behind the 6th grade classroom where she experienced her first twinges, as she thought of them. She only had 2 or 3 during the 2 years she spent teaching 6th grade. Nora couldn't even remember the first twinge because the moment she laid a hand on the young girl's shoulder, a small pat of encouragement as she made her way around the classroom, peering down at the students' progress on their math problems, she felt a sudden jolt surge through her arm, and she jerked away so quickly that nothing else had time to register with her. Nora did recall that the girl looked up at her in confusion as Nora stood there rubbing her right wrist, and that she smiled down at the girl's upturned face and murmured something about static electricity. As she moved back to her desk that September day, she knew it hadn't been an electrical shock that had coursed through her arm so suddenly, but she didn't know what else could have caused such an immediate jolt. The strange moment was soon forgotten, as Nora dealt with all the other chaotic moments that comprise the effective management of a 6th grade classroom. Excuse me. In late April of that same school year, though, she placed her hands firmly upon the shoulders of a boy named Timothy and pulled him away from an altercation in which he'd become embroiled. She grabbed Timothy while one of the 5th grade teachers took hold of the other boy, a chubby brat who got his kicks off picking on kids younger and smaller than he was, and then she and her coworker quickly separated the 2 fighting students. Prior to the altercation, Nora saw Timothy run to the 4-square game area, but she hadn't paid much attention beyond that because Timothy was a quiet and polite boy who, until that day, never caused problems. If you heard a noise, that was my dog sleeping. Sorry about that. Just before she spun Timothy around to face her, while her hands were still on his shoulders, she felt a twinge run up both her arms, and then the word hero popped into her head seconds before she released him in mid-spin. She placed her hands on her knees and squatted slightly to look at him face to face. "What in the world do you think you're doing?" The angry expression on his normally placid face surprised her as he exclaimed, "Marty was throwing bugs in Tanya's hair." Nora glanced at the group of 5th and 6th grade girls who'd been playing Foursquare and who were now watching the action. Tanya, a newer girl in the other 6th grade class, was wiping a few tears out of her eyes as another girl searched through Tanya's mess of natural curls, ostensibly looking for any vestiges of bugs. The second girl suddenly emitted a small shriek, yet she managed to extract a wiggling worm from her friend's hair. Nora understood then why Timothy had been so quick to act. Ever since Tanya's arrival after the Christmas break, Nora and the other 6th grade teacher would often see Timothy near Tanya at recess, during lunch, or after school. The 5th grade teacher was attempting to get Marty to admit to the wrongdoing, but the little bully wasn't having it. Instead, he was yelling, "I'm the victim here. See my knee? It's bleeding. Timmy pushed me down for no reason." By then, the assistant principal had arrived on the scene and was ordering both boys to go with her to the office. Nora watched as Timothy, without a fuss, stuck out his chin, squared his shoulders, and walked behind the assistant principal, while Marty had to be firmly guided by the other teacher, who kept a grip on his chubby arm. To this, Marty added further protest. "Ow, that hurts. My parents will sue the school. Just you wait." The assistant principal opened the school door and politely ushered Timothy inside, and then she relieved the fifth-grade teacher of his duty with a smile, reached over and took Marty even more firmly by the back of his neck and steered him into the school. As the door swung closed, the quiet playground was treated to Marty exclaiming, "Ow, ow, that hurts. It's all Timmy's fault." Then the students all began to laugh, and a few even mimicked Marty's, "Ow, ow, that hurts," until the other sixth-grade teacher loudly blew his whistle and shouted, "That's enough. Get back to playing, or you'll all go inside for extra spelling lessons." The teachers chuckled as they watched about 100 fifth and sixth graders quickly scatter. Nora, feeling the after effects of the jolts that had coursed through her arms, rubbed each wrist and recalled the word that had momentarily filled her thoughts. Hero. She shrugged and thought that the word made sense, given the situation. Timothy had acted quickly and decisively, the way a hero might, but she thought it odd that he'd labeled a 12-year-old boy a hero. Timothy and Marty both served a suspension, as per the school rules concerning fighting. Upon his return to school, Timothy gained a status of respect, while Marty sank even lower in everyone's esteem. The school year soon ended, and Timothy moved on to junior high and out of Nora's life. She lost track of Timothy, as she lost track of many of her students, until today. Today, Timothy's photo was plastered across the front page of the newspaper with the headline, "Local Hero Saves Mother and Her 2 Children." Nora read the story of how Timothy had been walking to his university class with a few friends when an out-of-control car nearly clipped his group as it careened off the road and struck a cement wall. While his friend seemingly froze from the shock of almost being hit by a car, Timothy dropped his backpack and rushed to the car, which was billowing smoke from its crumpled hood. The mother was slouched unresponsive over the steering wheel, while the 2 little boys in the back seat were conscious and crying. Timothy opened the door and pulled each child out, passing them to his friends. Then he ordered everyone to get back from the car out of fear it could explode. He yelled at some students who were gawking down upon the scene from a fraternity balcony across the street and told them to call 911. Then he opened the driver's door and attempted to wake the young mother. When that failed, he tilted her away from the steering wheel and pulled her free of the car, even though he feared moving her and causing her more injury. The flames licking the underside of the ruined hood hastened his decision to move her. He managed to gather her awkwardly into his arms and drag her a few feet before another student rushed over to help. They picked her up and hurried across the street to a safer distance on a grassy area where her 2 boys were waiting. The boys' wails were soon joined by the wails of fire trucks, police cars, and an ambulance. Timothy tried to slink away as soon as the woman was being tended by medical personnel, but bystanders had already pointed him out as the hero of the day. A police officer spoke to him, and later he was pinned down for questioning by a few eager reporters. Nora looked at the large photograph of the handsome young man Timothy had become, and she smiled. She could still see the boy he'd once been. The thing that struck her most, though, was that what she had foreseen all those years ago on the playground had come true. Timothy was a bona fide hero. She folded the newspaper and laid it on her kitchen table. As she sat gazing out the window, Nora traced her memories for other instances when she'd felt those twinges, and the words which followed them. She recalled nurse, boxer, homeless, great-great-grandfather, comedian, drifter, writer, soldier, and even surrogate. She'd never given any credence to these words, seeing them rather as a trick her mind would play on her at times when a student did something meaningful in her eyes. The boy who twinged her with the word comedian cracked her up with his antics and brought the first smile to her face in the months following her father's death 6 years ago. She remembered laughing and then placing a hand in a gesture of appreciation on the boy's shoulder as she said, "All right, Mario, that's enough. Thank you, though. I needed that." A twinge then ran up her arm, and comedian popped into her head. Smiling then, she thought it a distinct possibility he might be one someday. Mario moved to another town, and she lost track of him, as she did with most of her young charges. But looking down once more at the photo of Timothy's heroic face, a cold shudder ran down her back. God, let my twinges be meaningless, she prayed to the empty kitchen. If they weren't meaningless, Nora feared for the future of her town and for the soul of Jeremy, the quiet first-grade boy who sat near the window in her class this year. 2 weeks ago, Jeremy had been at his desk with his head bowed low, seemingly asleep. Nora approached him and lightly placed her hand upon his shoulder to wake him. The twinge she received raced up her arm and into her head with a speed she'd never experienced before. The words she heard caused her to jerk her hand away. Jeremy turned sleepy eyes up to her and yawned. Yet she thought she'd seen a touch of something else in their light blue depths, something evil and very much aware. He picked up his pencil and started copying the handwriting sample on his sheet, and Nora moved away to check on her other students' work. Now, though, as Nora looked out into her fenced and well-tended backyard, she heard those 2 words echoing in her head. Serial killer. Join me later for more of Twinges. Otherwise, just please pick up your own copy at Amazon. Thank you. Bye.